My name is Ethan Vu. I'm 31 Vietnamese American and a cybersecurity engineer managing internal security systems at Atlantic Ledger Capital, a financial investment firm worth over $4 billion. dollars. Sounds impressive, I know. But inside the company, I was just the IT guy, practically invisible to the Armani suit crowd that glided past us like we were part of the furniture. I didn't choose this career for the money. Years ago, my parents lost every cent of their retirement savings in a cyber attack. I watched my mother quietly pawn her wedding ring just to buy medicine for my father in the ICU. That day, I made myself a promise I would never let a system screw people like that again. For 3 years, I kept my head down. No scandals, no missed deadlines. I wasn't trying to stand out. In a place like Atlantic, staying under the radar was survival. Then came that meeting. "Ethan, I need you to clean up this log. Rick Dempsey," my direct manager said, waving his iPad with a fake smile. "It's showing an extra $80 million in closed funds. Gotta be a system error, right?" I leaned in and scanned the data. The validation and checksum are clean. "This is a real transaction, Rick." The room fell dead silent. I could feel the shift like I had just stepped on a landmine. Rick leaned back in his chair and tapped his Mont Blanc pen against the table, each click like a loaded chamber. "You really want to play the hero in a finance firm, Ethan? You understand how much damage this could cause?" I held my ground. "I'm just doing my job." But for a moment, I faltered. I thought of my parents, of what losing this job could mean. Would they have to relive that nightmare? Rick's eyes darkened. Sarah, his assistant, sat beside him. Her gaze flicked past me like I was a bug in the code that needed to be debugged. For a second, I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Doubt, pity. It vanished just as fast. After the meeting, Rick called me into his office. The door shut behind me with a soft but final click. He stepped in, close, too close. "You think I want to do this?" he said, voice low. "But here we all play by the rules. Or we disappear." I didn't respond. He smirked and turned his back as if the conversation had never happened. Back at my desk, I fought the anxiety clawing at my chest. I launched a private script I'd built for emergency audit trails just in case. Hours later, it pinged. My admin account had been accessed from a secure IP deep inside the executive floor. Someone had hijacked my credentials and left just enough breadcrumbs to frame me. Then came the HR email. "Subject role reassignment, Ethan. You are temporarily reassigned to a satellite project in our New Jersey office. Please refrain from accessing Atlantic Ledger systems during this period. Directive issued by executive authority." Minutes after I read it, Sarah walked by. Her eyes didn't flash arrogance this time. They flickered with something colder. "Jersey's pretty brutal this time of year," she said softly. "Bring a coat." I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. Who was pulling the strings? Why frame me? And how much time did I have before everything collapsed? New Jersey greeted me with gray skies and a forgotten office building tucked between loading docks and concrete walls. The satellite project I'd been reassigned to, a dead-end system no one cared about. No sensitive data, no oversight. Just a place to bury someone quietly. But I wasn't about to vanish that easily. That first night in a cheap motel room that smelled like mildew and resignation, I pulled out my personal laptop and connected an external drive. Before I was locked out, I'd instinctively backed up portions of the system logs. Maybe a part of me knew I'd need them. Buried in the archive was the transaction log from that meeting. I examined it line by line, and there it was, a script injected precisely when I left the room. A macro spoofing admin credentials using my session token with the originating IP tied directly to the executive floor. This wasn't just a frame job. It was a carefully planted trap. I needed more. This was just the surface. I created a sandbox environment, rebuilt a virtual version of the network, and let the script run. It didn't just delete logs. It opened a hidden backdoor connecting to an external server. I traced the receiving IP. My heart dropped. It belonged to a domain flagged in an ongoing international money laundering investigation 6 months ago. This wasn't about me. This was about something much bigger. I archived everything. Triple encrypted backups across 3 different cloud vaults. If they came for me, the truth would survive. The next morning, a message appeared in my inbox. No subject. No signature. "I know what you're digging into. I have what you're looking for. But if you want to keep breathing, stop now." This is your only warning. There was no fluff, just one line. And at the bottom, M. I froze. Was it Marvin, the former colleague who vanished after a quiet dismissal last year? Or someone else? Someone watching from the shadows, should I reply? Or was this the next trap I spent the entire morning thinking about, that one letter? M. Marvin was the obvious answer. But why now? Why return after disappearing without a trace? Then again, maybe it wasn't him. Maybe this was Rick's next move. Another bait, another setup. I didn't reply. Instead, I launched an encrypted communication shell I'd built during my time at Atlantic. A protocol meant for anonymous internal whistleblowing, ironically one Rick had once praised in a meeting. I ran an identity challenge embedded in the handshake request. 3 hours passed. A reply came in a compressed, password-protected file with no name, no explanation. I decrypted the layers. At the core was an audio recording, grainy but unmistakably real. A private meeting between Rick and 2 senior board members. "We need Ethan off the radar. He's too stubborn. If we don't wipe this clean, we're all screwed." That was Rick's voice. The second voice, Alan, Atlantic's CFO. My pulse spiked. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was a coordinated takedown, a system-wide cover-up. At the bottom of the audio file was a single line. "There's more, but you'll have to meet me. Come alone." The coordinates pointed to an abandoned coffee shop on the edge of Hoboken. Classic no cameras, no witnesses kind of place. It screamed setup. But I needed answers. When I arrived, the place looked exactly how I expected: dust-covered tables, flickering exit sign air, thick with damp decay. A figure sat at the back wearing a hoodie and a worn baseball cap. He looked up as I approached. Marvin. "Hey, Ethan," he said, voice raspy. "Long time." "Why now?" I asked. "Because now you have something to fight for." He told me how after being forced out of Atlantic, he'd started over at a tiny cybersecurity firm, but he never let go of what happened. For a year, he'd been digging, tracing transactions, collecting data, watching patterns. "I couldn't act alone," he said. "But you're in the spotlight. You have reach, and now you have motive." I didn't know if I should thank him or punch him, but deep down I knew he was right. I couldn't walk away now, not after everything they took from me. As I stood up to leave, Marvin said something that stopped me cold. "Sarah, she's not who you think she is. She warned me once. I didn't listen. Now I think she's in danger." I turned sharply. "She works for Rick." Marvin shook his head. "No, she's being held by Rick. She knows too much." My gut twisted. Sarah trapped. Was Marvin lying, or worse, telling the truth? And if he was right, what the hell was I supposed to do next? I didn't head back to New Jersey right away. Instead, I holed up in a cafe off Madison Avenue, staring at my laptop screen, while Marvin's words echoed in my head. Sarah's being held. What did that even mean? Was she a hostage, blackmailed, or worse? Had she tried to speak out like me and gotten silenced? I accessed a secure terminal and reviewed all internal access logs tied to Sarah's account from her final week at HQ. Odd patterns jumped out: multiple attempts to access audit logs from off hours, followed by an abrupt cutoff. Her digital presence had gone completely dark 2 Fridays ago. I messaged Marvin last known location. His reply came minutes later: underground garage, Brentmore Tower, 9 p.m. Come alone. No devices. I left my phone behind, carrying only a hidden tracker stitched into my belt. Brentmore was located near the financial district, just remote enough to avoid heavy surveillance. At 9 sharp, a man was waiting beside an old black SUV. I didn't recognize him. "She told me to hold on to this," he said, handing me a flash drive. "She never came back." I took it and left without asking more. The air was thick with unspoken warnings. Back in my motel, I loaded the drive into a secure sandbox environment. A single video file popped up. No title, no metadata. I hit play. It was a dim office, Rick's. Sarah stood near the door, clearly shaken. Rick loomed over her, voice low and venomous. "If you say another word, your career ends everywhere." He shoved her against the window. She pushed him back, then stormed out. Right before she exited, she turned and stared directly at the security camera. Her eyes tired but burning with defiance. I encrypted the video and uploaded it to 3 secure clouds. Then I sent a copy to Marvin with one message: I'm done staying quiet. The next morning I called in a favor. Laura, an attorney I once helped during a data breach crisis, was now with a whistleblower protection firm. I told her everything. The frame job, the logs, the offshore accounts, the threats. She didn't speak for a full minute. Finally, she said, "This is massive, Ethan. If this evidence is real, and from what I see it is, you're not just exposing one executive. You're going up against the corporate heart of Atlantic Ledger. You need to be ready, because once you file this complaint, there's no going back." I nodded. I'd already lost my job, my reputation. Hell, I didn't even have a stable address anymore. But I still had my integrity, and I wasn't about to let that be the next thing they stole. Laura and I assembled a case file for the SEC. We included everything, every log, every timestamp, the video of Rick and Sarah, and the proxy data from Marvin. We sent it off. The silence that followed was deafening, but sometimes silence is strategic. Before she left, Laura turned to me. "Just remember, now that you've gone public, you won't be the only one they try to silence." I stared at the reflection of my own face in the motel window, distorted by the rain outside. Was I truly ready for what came next, or had I just stepped into a war I couldn't win? 10 days later, Laura called. They responded, she said. "The SEC wants a closed-door hearing with Atlantic Ledger's board. They need you to present everything in person." I tightened my grip on the phone. When this Friday, 8 a.m., Midtown headquarters. I didn't sleep the night before. My mind replayed every humiliation, every time Rick had belittled me, every sneer, every moment of silence when I begged for someone to believe me. But deep down, I knew this was bigger than revenge. If I didn't stand up now, people like Rick would just keep burning everything to the ground and walking away clean. The SEC's building was all sterile lighting and tight-lipped stairs. I walked into the boardroom and found 8 people, waiting lawyers, SEC reps, and 3 members of Atlantic's leadership. Rick was already there. He looked polished in a gray suit and crimson tie, as if he hadn't spent the last few months covering up a multi-million-dollar scandal. Next to him sat Alan, the CFO, from the recording Marvin sent me. Laura started the presentation. She laid out the encrypted data logs, the system intrusion records, the backdoor script, the connections to offshore accounts. Then she played the video, Sarah being threatened by Rick. Rick's confidence shattered before my eyes. A sheen of sweat bloomed across his forehead. "This is doctored," he shouted. "It's fake. You can't trust this." Laura calmly pointed to the digital fingerprinting, the original timestamp, the unbroken checksum trail. "We've had this file verified by 3 independent forensic labs," she said. "Everyone confirms its authenticity." Catherine, one of the board members, leaned back in her chair. Her tone was cold, razor sharp. "Rick, do you have anything else to say before we vote internally?" Rick's lips trembled. He looked at me, and I saw something new in his eyes. Not hate, fear. The room went silent. 15 minutes later, we stepped outside for a recess. Laura handed me a letter. "The SEC wants to enroll you in their whistleblower protection program. Full legal backing, a settlement worth 1 year's salary. They'll also help rebuild your professional standing." I opened the envelope. My name printed clearly. A fresh start. But that wasn't the real victory. When the meeting resumed, Catherine announced the board's decision. "Rick Dempsey, you are hereby suspended from your position, effective immediately. A federal-level investigation will follow." Rick collapsed back into his chair. Alan stood up and stormed out without a word. The SEC officers entered the room moments later. Everything moved so fast I barely processed it. Walking out of that building, the sun hit my face for the first time in what felt like forever. It was like breathing clean air after months underground. For once, I didn't lower my gaze. I texted Marvin, "It's over." His reply came seconds later. "No, Ethan. There's one more layer." My fingers went cold. What was he talking about? Had I missed something? Was Rick just a puppet? I didn't go home. Not yet. Not with Marvin's message echoing in my head. One more layer. I called him immediately. "You think Rick was the big fish," he said. "He wasn't. He was just a pawn. The real architect behind the laundering is on the board." I barely whispered, "Alan." "No," Marvin replied. "Catherine." My breath caught in my throat. Catherine, the poised, no-nonsense board member who had chaired Rick's disciplinary hearing. The woman who read the suspension aloud. She played the role of judge and executioner, but she'd been directing the show all along. Marvin sent me a new data file complexly encrypted, taken from a remote offshore server. I decoded it line by line, and what I found made my blood run cold. Wire instructions, dummy corporations across Asia and the Middle East, fake consulting contracts, every one of them tied back to Catherine. Rick had merely been her cleaner. She'd orchestrated the money movement for years under the guise of internal compliance. When I got too close, Rick became the one to throw me under the bus. But the engine was always Catherine. I met with Laura again. I showed her everything. She sat silently scanning the data. "This is enough," she said finally. "But we're not taking this to press. We take it straight to the feds." The SEC launched a sealed investigation. No headlines, no leaks. Catherine continued appearing on CNBC praising corporate transparency. But behind closed doors, they were building a case. And I once again waited in silence. Only this time I understood silence was strategy. 2 months passed. Then just past midnight, Marvin called. "Turn on the news." I flipped channels. There she was, Catherine being led out of Atlantic Ledger headquarters in handcuffs flanked by federal agents. The anchor's voice was crisp. "Acting chairwoman of Atlantic Ledger Capital has been indicted on charges of international money laundering, financial fraud, and obstruction of justice." I sat in the dark motel room, hands clasped tightly, not out of vengeance, but something heavier. Satisfaction, closure, numbered justice. The next morning, I received an email from the SEC, a formal offer to join as a cybersecurity consultant for internal investigations. They needed someone who knew the inside and had the guts to speak up. I accepted. Not for status, not for revenge, but because I knew somewhere out there were more Ethans. 3 months later, Atlantic Ledger restructured its board. The media ran articles praising the whistleblower who rewrote the rules of financial accountability. At a conference in San Francisco, I stood before a crowd of young analysts, investors, and engineers, all waiting, listening. I looked out across the stage and said I was once just the IT guy who got fired and publicly humiliated. But I learned something: justice doesn't come from power. It comes from the decision to stand up, especially when no one else will. The room erupted in applause. In the front row, I saw Marvin, and next to him, Sarah, smiling. I nodded. We didn't just survive. We rewrote the rules.